The Great Debate Series. Best teams of the last 30 years.
And today we tackle the NBA. Just a hint, tomorrow we're doing college basketball. But today, the NBA takes center stage. So best teams the last 30 years, here we go. Number 5 on the list is the 04-05 San Antonio Spurs.
2 on the shot clock. And from the corner, it's Duncan. Duncan puts it on the floor. Lays it off to Ginobili. The 2 on the clock. Huge.
Massive. This was peak Big Three. So you've got Duncan, only played 66 games that year, but was first team All-NBA because he was that good. He dealt with an ankle sprain mid-season. You had Parker, his best defensive season of his career. Manu Ginobili was an all-star, led the Spurs in win shares in the playoffs. You had Robert Horry, who has joined the show frequently, was phenomenal, almost won a finals game single-handedly. Brent Berry was fantastic. Bruce Bowen, another first-team All-NBA defensive effort turned in. Of course, you got Greg Popovich. Of all the Spurs teams that were so great, to me, 04-05 was the best. Perloff, this one was tough for you and I to agree on.
Yeah, this is my really only disagreement with you on this one.
Yep.
I think it's a little weird because it's an old Tim Duncan, but the 13-14 team is actually more dominant, had more wins. They set a record. They had the most lopsided finals in the history of NBA finals. They won a 70-point differential over the full LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh Heat. That's incredible to me. They had more of a team. So here's a repeated theme.
That was a Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi is the Finals MVP there.
Right, but they had Kawhi Leonard was the Finals MVP. They had about 9 or 10 guys who contributed. Tim Duncan was not the superstar anymore, but they played team basketball. They were 62-20. Here's the other thing too. They were on this crazy revenge tour because it was a year after the Heat barely beat them in the finals. The Ray Allen three-pointer. So I don't know if you count that, but this was the most motivated Spurs team of the run, the most, the best numbers. It was an old Tim Duncan. I think you're right. The 04-05 team might have beaten them, but they're still just what they accomplished was a little greater to me. But we're splitting hairs. I mean, it's the Spurs, same team.
When I tell you that Perloff and I argued about this for no less than 5.5 hours, would you say? Combined,
yeah, we went back
over
and forth.
2 days,
and
maybe
we
more.
put in we had the 07 Spurs in that list too.
Couldn't do it though because of the Tim Donaghy, the cheating scandals and stuff that were surrounding that.
I had no problem with that.
Let's move on. Number 4 on the list, the 2012-2013 Miami Heat.
Oh, they got the rebound on the miss. Wade will throw it to LeBron. He'll hold on. They'll play keep away. And they'll give it to Chris Bosh. And the Miami Heat are going to be back-to-back champions of the basketball world. It never gets old having a parade for the 3rd time down Biscayne Boulevard.
Was that Heat radio? No, fantastic call. They went 66-16 that year. They also had a 27-game winning streak that started from February 3rd, Perloff, and didn't end until March 25th. Phenomenal. They were top 5 in points per game and defensive points allowed. They were second in offensive rating in the playoffs, beat Milwaukee, beat Chicago, swept Milwaukee, beat Chicago, beat Indiana, and then beat the Spurs in 7 games in that 2012-2013 season. The better, I think, of the two title teams for the Heatles, and phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason they're not higher than 4 is they had a battle in the postseason where a lot of these teams, if you're looking at top 5 teams, I think part of it is you got to run through the playoffs. And I think you could argue maybe you got a little lucky against them Spurs in the final game. Ray Allen, that was cutting close for this Heat team. How come they didn't win the playoffs more easily? It's kind of funny to me. Like, they really had to fight.
I think because, listen, I think those Chicago teams with Joakim Noah and Tom Thibodeau and Derrick Rose, when he was healthy, were better than people remember. And those Indiana teams were better than people remember. Paul George, I know Roy Hibbert, you're like, haha, but those were good teams. They were tough.
You know what it is? They create such an expectation. When LeBron got there, he said not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. I thought at the time, oh, my God, they're going to win 5 NBA titles. It's going to be, so easy for them. But the truth is, it wasn't. I think LeBron, to his credit, worked so hard on those teams. Nothing came easy to that team. And I think it was also important LeBron took over the team from Wade.
Yep.
Wade was great. But I think that was a transition that they had to figure out. When he joined there, it's like, oh, it's Dwayne Wade's team, and LeBron became the full LeBron.
And credit to Wade, he's the one who stepped back. Okay, number 3 on the list, the 2000-2001 Los Angeles Lakers.
Bryant trying to shake off snow. Here's Bryant. The Lakers take a 94-92 lead.
Marv Albert on that call. Stu, Laker fan, was very happy with this. The middle of the three-peat is the team we went with. They lost one game in the postseason. That set a record at the time, 15-1. Later was matched by the Golden State Warriors. They beat Portland, they beat the Suns, they beat the Spurs, they beat Perloff 76ers, and the only game they lost in the finals was an overtime game in Game 1 against Allen Iverson and those Sixers. So this team was a one that added Horace Grant. Shaq was first-team All-NBA. Kobe was second-team All-NBA. They both were All-NBA defensive teams that year. And, of course, Shaq was the finals MVP.
Yeah, I mean, Philly did get one lasting memory out of that finals.
They
Allen
did.
Iverson got to step over Ty Lue.
Poor Ty Lue. He's like the guy who gets remembered.
Unless the officials called fouls on Shaq, there's no team ever. I mean, you could not stop Shaq. He was so good at this point. And my guy, Kobe, it was a great one.
And, Stu, you thought this was the best team of the three-peat.
I did, yeah. The first team the year before that won like 11 more games during the regular season, but they kind of struggled a little in the postseason. And the third team was good. Obviously, you had the Donaghy situation, which kind of, maybe puts a little asterisk on that title. But I think the second middle title was the best team and the most impressive for sure.
Let's move on. Number 2 on the list are the 2016-2017 Golden State Warriors.
Redemption has brought the Warriors back home. The Golden State Warriors are the 2017 NBA champions. Final score, Golden State 129, Cleveland 120. The Warriors win the NBA Finals and capture the NBA title for the second time in 3 years. Let's end the discussion right now. The Golden State Warriors have a seat at the table with the best teams of all time.
Wow, the call right on the nose. Nice job there, Samter. So this is a year after the 73-9 team that lost to the Cavaliers. Kevin Durant comes on board. They go 67-15. Again, match those 2000-2001 Lakers where they only lost one game in the entire postseason, and that was in the finals. They were first in points scored that year. They beat Portland. They beat Utah, San Antonio, then the Cavs. You had Durant and Curry both averaging 25 points per game that season. Clay averaged 22. And then Durant and Curry both averaging 28 points per game in the playoffs. First of 2 finals MVPs for Durant. This was the team.
Yeah. Now, listen, should we have put the 73-win team on there?
Let's save that discussion for a second, and we'll reveal number 1. Why don't we circle back to it?
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Number 1 on the list of greatest NBA teams of the last 30 years. The 1995-96 Chicago Bulls.
On the floor here at the United Center. The Michael Jordan comeback will be completed. Here is Jordan kicking it out. We are just under 1 minute.
First full season back from Jordan after he played baseball. It was an MVP season for him. He won finals MVP, so it was his 4th MVP overall, 4th finals MVP. He was all defensive, second team that year. He led the league in scoring, averaging 30 points per game. They were first in offense that season. They were third in defense. Pippen, of course, all defensive first team, and that was the 4th straight year that he was on that list. They went 72-10. And this was the first championship of the second three-peat. They added Rodman. They added Steve Kerr. They added Kukoc. They added Luke Longley, along with Jordan and Pippen and Phil Jackson at the helm. This was the greatest team of the last 30 years.
Hard to argue. I mean, I think the only legitimate argument is, did we get the right Bulls team? The 72 win sort of put it out of the league. The only thing is in the first three-peat, if you wanted to pick one of those teams, I would argue Michael Jordan was a little bit better because he was younger. So
scoring more.
He scored more. I think the last time he led the league in steals was 93. I mean, he was a menace on defense. But the overall team, the guys around him were definitely better in the last three-peat. You can't argue adding Kukoc. And also, I think Pippen gained some confidence a little bit. He was a different player in the second three-peat. He was like an MVP-type player, where the first one, he was a little younger. So everything about that team was unbeatable. I think both eras could have competed with anybody.
Yep.
But it was like, that was the team. You know what I got confused with, Maggie? I kept thinking the 98 team because I watched The Last Dance. And I realized that, wow, that 96 team was better than the 98 team.
If you want to go through some of the metrics and things like that, they were the 95-96 team is the best team. Yes, Samter, you look like you want to say something.
So I just, I know obviously we're trying to spread it out for as many of the different various dynasties throughout the past 30 years. But I said this before the show, and Steve Tannen on Twitter says the same thing. No idea how it turns out that the 96 Bulls are number one and the 97 Bulls aren't number two.
Right.
The exact same team. They went from 72 wins to 69 wins.
Yeah.
They, instead of losing only one game in the, one game in the Eastern Conference playoffs, they lost 2 games in the Eastern Conference
there
playoffs.
you go.
Yeah.
They beat the Jazz instead of the
Should've tried
Sonics.
harder.
It was basically the exact same team.
Supersonic Steve was really good.
Yeah, and the Jazz team was
Jazz
really
team
good too. They went to back-to-back finals and lost 4-2, including obviously the Bryant shot. It's hard. I understand we want to spread it out, but I honestly look at the list and I say if the 95-96 Bulls are number one, then the 96-97 Bulls have to be on the list too.
Okay, but
Even
the
if they're not number
95-96 Bulls were literally number one in offensive rating and number one in defensive rating in the league that year. Because we're doing degrees of greatness, you're kind of getting into some of the molecular numbers here. And honestly,
no, he's saying that
a lot of teams should be represented, though.
Right. I agree. You're not going to do a list of 4 Bulls teams. What?
Well, listen, we're talking about
the same people.
We're talking about the 5 best teams since 1993. And listen, I don't disagree that the 95-96 Bulls are the best Bulls team of the 6, but if the 96-97 team is the second best team, they're still probably better than all the other teams.
I know. This is difficult. I mean,
this is something you could have talked on the side to us about, Mike. Our mics are open. No, I understand, but I think this is a much more fun way to do the list myself.
I think that basically what we want to do is be a little more representative of everything that happened in 30 years. So you want to tell the story of the NBA over the last 30 years with the best teams. The Bulls are being the number one. You're getting the gist there, because what are you going to leave off? You're going to leave off the 2000-2001 Lakers? That's ridiculous. You can't tell the story of the NBA the last 30 years with them. You can't tell the story of the NBA the last 30 years without the Spurs. Same with the Warriors.
Spurs.
What are you going to do?
The Spurs were a little tricky because they spread out their titles. And it wasn't as easy to pick one Spurs team. That's why we tripped on them.
Oh, my gosh. We debated this forever. The other thing was the 73-win Warriors.
Yeah, what do you do with them?
So what do you do with the 73-win Warriors who broke, obviously, the Bulls' best record of the regular season? But the Durant teams were just better, and they lost in the finals.
I would have liked to see that 73-win team without Durant play the Durant teams because you lost a little. When Durant got there, I think you lost 5% of Steph. And then when Durant left and you got all the Steph back, and that was an interesting team. But, by the way, can I just say one thing? The 93 Bulls, Michael Jordan averaged 41 points a game in the finals against the Phoenix Suns, which still stands as the most ever. Early Jordan was not going to lose either. So that's not even fair.
It could have just been a list of all Bulls teams.
Yeah,
that's not very fun.
It could have been 4 Bulls teams in the 01 Lakers.
Yeah, probably. Maybe it should have been.